So how much have building costs gone up really? Here's some actual hard numbers, and what can it do to the ultimate selling price or build price of a house? Here's an article from New York Post which features some Instagram model, not sure who this is, but they talk about their build on their dream house and how much it went up in cost. And they get into some hard numbers which kind of match what we're seeing in the construction industry. So some of the numbers don't add up to the total what they're saying for a $3 million house, but let's just take a look and see what some of the numbers are. So first, look at the timeline. The person bought a lakefront lot of land for $260,000. Their goal to build a $3 million castle house. They started building it in 2020. That was 2 years ago. So 4 years later, the house still isn't done. Now, here's the thing. We know in Texas, it takes a lot less time to build a house in other states. We've seen subdivisions where it went from an empty lot to a finished CO house within 3 months, within 90 days. So it may not have been as complicated of a house as this, but we've seen houses go up very, very quickly. In fact, there was a commercial property, we always laughed, where they built a drive-through Chick-fil-A restaurant in 33 days from the time it was graded lot to open the door. 33 days. You can build houses fast. So 4 years is a problem. So the first thing is that they took out an extra $100,000 loan for unexpected costs. Well, what are the costs? Well, they talk about supply chain issues where they couldn't even get some of the things they wanted to. But then when it comes to cost, let's just take a look. Instagram model. Okay, I get it. So here's one. Their initial budget for lumber was $105,000. As of last month, their budget was already $177,000. That's about 60 or 70% higher. That's what we've seen in construction costs for lumber, right? For just the lumber package. So, but my question is this. How much of the whole house are we talking about? It looks like from the pictures, this house is substantially complete for framing. So all the lumber should be in there. So 177, if that's complete, that doesn't add up to be a $3 million house because lumber should be about a third of the total price of the house. So a $3 million house, lumber should be $1 million or maybe even a little bit less. 177 doesn't make sense. So maybe this is only part of the lumber bill. Maybe there's something else going on. But the bottom line is that they're saying their budget is 70% higher. Maybe they're going to spend more, but 70% is about correct for lumber. But that's not the only cost that goes into a house. They also talk about a certain type of stone. I guess they were using for architectural features. They had budgeted $27,500, but now they spent almost $40,000. And there was delays. Came from a quarry in Oklahoma, but that's part of the supply chain problem. Let's talk about appliances. For appliances, they had a budget of $65,000. Well, that went up to $78,000. That's actually pretty good. A lot of appliances we've seen almost have doubled for appliance packages, so they didn't get hit that much on the house. But even if you add those things up, obviously there's more cost that goes into a house. There's labor, there's finishings, furnishings, site work, landscaping. But even if you add these things up, it doesn't seem like it adds up to be a $3 million house. I could be wrong, but there's probably more to it than meets the eye. It may be that it's going to cost them $800,000 or $900,000 to build the house, and they think it's going to be a $3 million house in value. That could be the case. But it's not a house that costs $3 million to build, even looking from the photos of it. So what does that mean? Well, supply chain issues are still in existence. We're still running into delays in some items, especially adhesives, some interior finishes. The lumber price has stabilized a little bit. It's still running about $600, $620 for 1,000 board feet, which is definitely half of what it was a year ago, but it's well above, it's double what it was 2 or 3 years ago. Is it going to go up or down? It's probably going to stay about that. We've talked about it before. Lumber should be staying between 550 and 750, maybe touches 800, but it should be have a narrower trading range of what it had before. They also have now a new commodity purchase opportunity where you can buy truckload instead of train loads, which will make it easier for liquid markets. The big question is home construction. Well, if you're building a house for yourself, not speculation, it's a little bit different than builders constructing a spec neighborhood, because the builder's now on the hook until they sell that house. The housing market is still in question. We believe it's still going to be strong once the dust settles. But right now, builders are not putting their neck out on the line to build spec houses, a speculation neighborhood, because you don't know if you're going to sell the house. And if your money's out there, your budget, your finances could be at risk. So if it's a self-build or a client commissions you, hires you to build the house for them to live in, and they have the money and you're getting draw payments, different story. You're not really hanging yourself out to dry on finances. But if you're a builder that just, I want to build a house and then sell it, at the cost of lumber, materials, labor is right now, you may not be able to recoup your investment. In fact, we watched a video this week. It was a flashback of was the first episode of This Old House. Remember Norm Abrams, Bob Vila back in the 1980s, early 1980s. They bought a house to rehab and fix up and sell. And this house was in Dorchester, Massachusetts. They paid $17,000 for the house. They put another $42,000 into it. And you might say, that's cheap. And it was a nice house, too. But when they finished, they sold it for $38,000. So they lost money on it. Now, they developed a TV show, and they went on to make millions and had a big following. So that's not the point. But it does show you that it's possible to build, construct, or rehab a house and not get your money back. You have to be very careful with your budget on construction, whether it's a rehab, addition, remodel, building a new house. It's not automatic that you're going to get your money back. You have to be very careful with the budget, knowing your market, knowing how big a house to build. You don't want to build too big. You don't want to build too small. You don't want to overbuild with high-end furnishings that you won't be able to recoup, but you also don't want to do just builder grade on a 5,000 square foot house either. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to have a timeline. The longer you sit with that house, the more fixed costs accrue to that house. The more interest carrying costs accrue to that house. If you can knock out a house in 5 or 6 months, get it built and sold, boom, you don't have too many carrying costs, and your market is not going to fluctuate too much. If you sit on a house like these people for 2 or 3 years, you have no idea what your construction costs are going to be. Your delays cost you money. Plus, all your fixed costs for your construction company, your office, your insurance, your rent, electricity, overhead, executive pay, now you have 22 months of that added to your expenses instead of 8 months. So fixed costs is an important thing to amortize into the construction budget, whether you're pricing out a project for a client or you're building a house for a client or you're building a spec home. You want to factor that in because it's real money you're paying. It's not just magic money that goes away. That's an example of construction cost. Rule of thumb, things are about 70% higher than they were a couple years ago. So if you're getting lumber package quotes, keep those increases in mind so you don't get caught short with a quote that's too low or a budget that's too low to complete construction.